Hello, everybody. This is the second session of IMR's new educational initiative, and in this video, I will discuss clinical trial registration. I will talk about its history, which studies require registration, and where to register. However, before starting about trial registration, let's take a look at the classification of different types of clinical research. So as you can see in this very informative schematic published some years ago in Lancet by two well-known researchers, David Grimes and Kenneth Schultz, about different types of clinical research, we can see that clinical research can be divided into two main categories based on answering a main question, whether researchers assigned exposures or not. It is possible that sometimes researchers use available data and don't alter the management or treatment of patients. In that case, this type of research is referred to as an observational studies. However, if researchers assign exposures, change the management, manipulate the treatment of patients, these studies are called experimental studies. And when they are done on human, we call them trial, and trial registration is actually pertain to this category of research. So it's very important to know that studies which are done on human or on group of people or patients are considered trial, and registration of those trials are mandatory. The history of trial registration goes back to something about 20 years ago, when it was realized that some trials with positive results were published more than once, while some other studies with negative results might not be published at all. So in September 2004, International Committee of Medical Journal Editors announced that trial registration would be a condition for publication in their journals after July 2005. And at that time, the number of legitimate registries for researchers to register their trials were very limited. Actually, it was only clinicaltrials.gov, which was sponsored by US National Library of Medicine. It was a registry with the required criteria. Later on, World Health Organization approved the approach of ICMJE, and other countries started to set up their own clinical trial registries, and an umbrella was created called the International Clinical Trials Registry Platform. And different countries, for example, Brazil, Cuba, Germany, UK, France, EU, Iran, Lebanon, Japan, started to set up their own clinical trial registries. So my first advice to you is that if you are going to perform some studies on human and you are going to intervene and do experimental study, the first thing is to find whether your country has its own trial registry or not, because some countries mandate their researchers to register their trials specifically to their own clinical trial registries. Otherwise, if your country doesn't have such clinical trial registries, in any of these clinical trial registries under the umbrella of World Health Organization, if you register your trial, it is okay, and journal editors should accept that and proceed with possible publication of your study. So what was those criteria that I told you are necessary for clinical trial registries? The first criterion is that these registries should be accessible to the public at no charge. They should be open to all prospective registrants and should be managed by a non-for-profit organization. They should have a mechanism to ensure the validity of the registration data, and by sure they must be electronically searchable. The purpose of clinical trial registration, as I mentioned earlier, was firstly to prevent selective publication. So whenever you are doing a trial, whether you receive a negative or positive results, the results should be published so that future people who want to work on systematic reviews should have access to both positive and negative results of a same research question. The next purpose is to prevent selective reporting. This means that any results that you reach shouldn't be manipulated, and those favorable results be published, those unfavorable results not published. Anything that you reach during a research should be published. The third purpose is to prevent unnecessary duplication of research effort. Because performing a research is very time consuming, budget consuming, and you put your resources and budget on doing a research, so you don't want to do something that have already been done in other places. So to prevent unnecessary duplication of research effort is another purpose of registration of clinical trial. The next purpose is to help patients and public know what trials are at the moment ongoing or plan to do, so that if you want to enroll in those trials, you should be able to. And then the last purpose is to help research ethics board or institutional review board, whose responsibility are to consider different protocols and approve them, have an idea of what are the similar work and data relevant to the research that they are considering. In the latest recommendation of the International Committee on Medical Journal Editors published a few months ago in 2025, the ICMJE requires and recommends that all medical journal editors require registration of clinical trials in a public trial registry at or before the time of first patient enrollment as a condition of consideration for publication. So this means that registration should be before the first patient enrollment or at the time of that. So retrospective registration is not recommended because it doesn't meet none of the purposes of trial registration that I mentioned earlier. ICMJE defines a clinical trial as any research project that prospectively assigns people or a group of people to an intervention with or without concurrent comparison or control group. So it's not important whether you have a control group or not. Whether you are working on people or patient or a group of patient or people and you are doing an intervention, you are manipulating the management of the patient, you need to register that. So any trial that is done on people with or without concurrent control group to study the relationship between a health-related intervention and health outcome should be registered. And journals are recommended to publish the trial registration number at the end of the abstract. So what does ICMJE mean by health-related intervention and health-related outcome? Actually, health-related intervention is any intervention or management that we will do on patients or people using drugs or surgical procedures or devices, behavioral treatment, educational programs, dietary interventions, quality improvement interventions, and process of care changes. And while we are doing these interventions, we need to seek for health outcome. So the trials should lead to health outcome in order to be eligible to be registered in one of those registries. And what we call as health outcome are any biomedical or health-related measures obtained in patients or participants, including pharmacokinetic measures and adverse events. So ICMJE encourages registration of non-trial design, but because the exposure or intervention in non-trial research is not dictated by the researchers, the ICMJE doesn't require it. It means that it is not yet mandatory for non-trial design to be registered in those trial registry. But it's a good idea to do that. It adds to the transparency. But it is not a requirement that journals ask you. And if you haven't done so, you can continue with your submission of your article to different journals, and journal editors should proceed with evaluation and possible publication of your non-trial design without any trial registration. Secondary data analysis of primary clinical trials shouldn't be registered as separate clinical trials, but instead should reference the trial registration number of the primary data. So if you are using your data which you already have registered it once, for secondary analysis of those data, you need to register again. You just need to mention the primary registration number. So for more understanding of the topics that I discussed today, I would like to share two questions with you, and I would like you to ask your answers with my colleagues at the IMR. In November 2023, we performed a medical writing and publishing workshop at McMaster University. At the time of a workshop, we planned to do two studies. The first one was a classic before-after study on the confidence of participants of the workshop, and we used a valid and reliable instrument to evaluate the confidence of participants, once before the start of the workshop and another time after finishing the workshop. Do you think that this study needs a trial registration or not? And my second question is that at that time we planned to, after 3 months of the workshop, randomly assign the participants to two different groups to receive a booster educational dose of teaching material or not, and check again the confidence of participants in these two groups using the same valid and reliable tool. In that case, do you think we needed to register our approach and the study or not? Thank you very much for your time, and these are extra references if you want to study more about this issue. And please share your answer or comment with my colleagues at the IMR. These are my contact info if you need to. And looking forward for the third educational movie in this regard. Thank you very much.